I can't stop myself. I don't know why.
Me neither. Um, well, Mahir, thank you so much for helping with my project. I thought to get things started, maybe you could talk a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Mihir, and I'm currently in high school. It is my senior year, and I am really passionate about spaceflight events which are happening. And for the past 2 to 3 months, I've been writing for NASA spaceflight, and it's been a great journey following spaceflight events and with all those events which will make humanity a multiplanetary species while we go from moon to Mars using NASA's Artemis missions. It really excites me. Like, it's the main thing which I've been following for the last 2 to 3 years.
Now, you were talking about how a lot of the people that you interact with there don't know much about space and space exploration, and maybe their concerns on some other things. What are the what do you find that people are really thinking about? And whenever they find out that we're doing these things in space, does it excite them? Or are they very skeptical and wondering why are we doing these things?
Yeah, so basically, in my high school, I can talk about. Um, I usually be with people who are really interested in technology and science. So they don't really have an interesting opinion about spaceflight. It's like, okay, it's happening. I don't really care. And I guess it's the fact that we didn't have much action in spaceflight community until this year. By when the SpaceX launched 2 humans to the International Space Station. And during these COVID times, I've heard so many times, oh, why are we giving money to NASA? Why is NASA getting a budget increase? And why shouldn't we use all those budget which are spending, which we have spent on SLS towards the healthcare programs? And people generally don't know what NASA has contributed, and I really want to change that. I really want people to know how NASA is impactful in its 1960s and even today, and it deserves much larger budget than it is currently getting.
Yeah, it's and how about your peers? I mean, right now, it's last year of high school. Everybody's trying to figure out what college they're going to go to. They're thinking about what professions they're going in. My oldest son, he's in high school. Oh, sorry, my youngest son's in high school. My oldest son is in college. So I've kind of also have a view on that. Also, my wife is Indian, and I've been to Mumbai like 3 times and to Bangalore 1 time, and a lot of our friends are Indians and what have you. So I say this, from a place of experience, that it's been my experience that in the Indian community, the parents really pressure children to go on proven paths, things that have already shown to actually be successful. Like, for example, a lot of emphasis on being doctors or engineers. And back whenever Google and Facebook were little bitty companies, they may have been discouraged from actually going to work at those companies. But now that those companies are huge, they're like, you should go work at those companies. And I was wondering from like an inside perspective, do you see the same sorts of things, or is that like a mischaracterization?
It is from, not been really, I was not brought up in India. But the thing is, I know because whenever I visited India, it's like, oh, what do you plan on studying? And I would say, I really like computers and rockets. So we're like, oh, so you're gonna apply to Google and Microsoft, right? So like it is prevalent there, but as far as my parents go, they don't really care. They even they say that you should go into a startup because there is a lot of potential to grow, and when you work for startups. So yes, it is prevalent there, and it is the main thing is it is mostly with people who uh, couldn't grow their careers themselves, and they want their children to be in those successful companies, so that they can have a better lifestyle. I think that's the reason.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting even from the startup standpoint, right? Because the majority of startups fail, right? It's just these are new ideas. Sometimes the market's not ready for them. Sometimes the people that have the startup just don't have the skills or connections or resources to make them successful. But now that you've had so many startups that have grown so quickly, just the concept of startup, people are probably more open to that.
Yeah, according to me, you shouldn't really treat the startups as, oh, they have a chance to maybe not grow as much. But I think you can get a lot of experience from startups, and actually really get to know how the world works. Even though we read like, oh, Tesla was in the brink of bankruptcy, or SpaceX would have not existed after the fourth launch. But I don't know how to feel how they worked for the fourth launch, or how the Tesla, worked around all its issues, and now it's like doing pretty well. So I guess in the early times of the career, experience matters the most.
Yeah, and that fourth launch thing, I know they don't have the money for like the fifth launch or what have you, but I just have trouble believing they would just give up.
Yeah, yeah, like I don't know Elon personally, but I don't think he's a guy to like, okay, I've four launches that have failed, I'm gonna give up. He's not a guy that gives up easily. But I guess they barely made that fourth launch happen. They had some leftover parts or something. So yeah, it's
Um,
pretty inspiring actually.
so when did you find out that NASA is planning to go back to the moon in 2024? You're in space journalism now, but a year and a half ago, around whenever it was first announced, um,
Uh,
were you aware of it or?
I was aware. Actually, I didn't know until 2020. January 2020. I didn't know about much what NASA is doing. I was mainly focused on, SpaceX and Boeing and commercial crew. I wasn't really focused on Artemis, because, SLS being postponed. And I knew that there was some rocket that existed, but by the time I grew much, my curiosity grew much. Then I started to look forward to ULA rockets as well, and then I got to know, oh, this is an SLS rocket. But I didn't really care, because it was supposed to launch in 2017, and then 2018, then 2019, and 2020. It was November 2020 when I got to know about it, and now it's 2021. But after reading much more about it, after talking to many engineers from NASA, I really think they can launch before November 2021. The way they're pacing those green run activities, but yeah, it is pretty like sad that most of the people didn't know that we were going to the moon, just like the Apollo times. Because I don't think there are much differences between the launching part of actually Apollo and Artemis. SLS is very similar to Saturn V, so it's pretty saddening. But I guess it will make headlines when it launches.
Yeah, I mean, now it's really different than it was in 1950. I mean, in 1950, nobody knew what space was, and suddenly the Russians put this thing into orbit, and it's like beeping overhead. And
and it's yeah, going over the US territory, and they cannot do anything about it. Like they just discovered a whole new boundary of territory that they need to go and they need to explore.
yeah,
So yeah.
and then the Russians put a dog into space and a person into space, and and all of our rockets are like exploding, on the launch pad and what have you. And it's uh, I mean, back then, the thought of having like nuclear war between the USSR and the US was like a really, um, it felt like a really real thing, right? I mean, now it's hard to imagine. And
Yeah, it's even hard to imagine like those two countries, they were literally on the verge of fighting. I've heard instances that there were some false alarms that US has launched some nuclear missiles, but it was actually a flaw. And there was just so many things happening. I guess it was one of the most tense part of of the human history, but I guess one positive part of it was it gave us Apollo. It uh, it ushered a new era in science where the innovation really just it expanded like a big bang. And now we yeah guess we don't have much innovation in space flight, but we have technology, and I guess it is the best time to go to moon now, as soon as possible.
but I think the awareness back then was so much higher because of that, because they saw it as being a way to compete and regain the top ground from like the USSR. But
Yeah.
now, I think people are like thinking, well, we've already been to the moon. What's the point? All this is like, I mean, out of like the 250 plus interviews I've done, only about 50 of them knew that we were going to the moon.
What?
I know.
Oh, I mean, all right. So like it is very saddening actually. Such few people know about going to the moon, and I guess much fewer will know what are we gonna do after going to the moon, and why are we going, and what is the point behind the Artemis. And it was really my inspiration to join NASA spaceflight, to educate people who don't know or have a negative view about spaceflight, that it is for the benefit of whole humanity, and we all will be benefited from all the research from not only ISS but from the surface of the moon. I don't know what will happen, but it'll be pretty great.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's different. In addition to not having like this competition between USSR and the US, the way that we consume the news is completely different now. Um, Back then we had three broadcast television stations. We had newspapers that everybody read, and if you got an article in one of those things, literally everybody knew about it, and that's what they talked about. But today, I mean, you and me, I bet you, if we look at our news, they look very similar. It's probably all space, 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 science, space, 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 science, something like that. But if we go look at somebody else's news feeds, it might be something completely different. It might be strawberries, 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 orange strawberries, and they don't even see anything about space. Just like we probably don't see anything about,
Biology.
yeah, exactly. About something that we probably should know about that we don't. Um, and so, like NASA spaceflight, for example, I read that all the time. It's like a very important news source. But I guarantee you that my non-space people probably have never even heard about it.
Yeah, uh, you know, we are trying to expand to include topics such as science, because it is because according to me, it is very difficult to just hop onto a NASA spaceflight article and start reading it, because that article, uh, every one of those articles is like. Uh, I guess it is meant for those people who are constantly interacting with spaceflight. And even though I see Washington Post posting about space flight, and they just have an article which is like around two paragraphs, and that's it. Whereas in NASA space flight, we don't even write articles which are like below 800 words. So I guess it is pretty overwhelming for someone who's not in spaceflight to read one of those type of articles. But I think we should, you know, we are more including more science which are getting, because I guess we can get more people from STEM community to participate in space flight than any other else. So,
And that's really ironic considering who owns the Washington Post.
oh yeah, yeah, Blue Origin, right?
Well, Jeff Bezos. Yeah.
I just wish that they would be more open to what they're doing. Um, even ULA is like their CEO constantly interacting with Twitter community. It's just like, wow, I couldn't have ever imagined that. I could just tweet him some question and I'll get an answer in like an hour or two. So I wish they could have, be more transparent about what they're doing.
But
But I guess we have to wait for it.
instead of focusing on improving the content on NASA spaceflight, have y'all thought about maybe trying to find articles or spins of articles to actually get into other media? Um, like for example, USA Today, they may not have like somebody that covers space, but if they had like little bite-sized stuff they could just put on their media, and then like the local radio and places like that, little taglines, or what I mean.
I've been like the newest member of NASA Spaceflight, so I don't really know of any article have made into mainstream media, but I do really say that whenever we do just like a normal live stream for SN5, that SN5 launch, that hop, and that image got into like most of the mainstream media, because we don't they don't really have much people which are reporting on Starship, because it is such an unpredictable program. We don't really know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. So that thing really does make into mainstream media. But uh, I have read that sometimes our articles have been mentioned in CNBC or something, but I'm not really sure. But it's a great suggestion.
So do you have like a space club, or a society that you have there that
Like in my high school.
Mhm.
Um, actually, we don't, but we do have a tech club, and I really, and as I mentioned, there aren't really many people which are much interested in space flight. Until recently, some people have been popping about, SpaceX launching humans, Musk launching humans, exactly. So, that has, spread some interest among some people. But I actually founded a tech club in my high school when I was in, 11th grade, and I talk about space flight in there, but not much people are interested in. But we are growing. um, we can only grow much when we see actual action happening, and with these SpaceX launches, and when Boeing comes around for OFT2 or even the CFT1, I guess its interest is going to grow. And even from my experience, I used to watch space shuttle launches. I was very young, so I didn't really remember, but I do remember certain instances that I remember space shuttle landing and launching, and it kind of faded away when it got retired. I didn't really care about it. Uh, I I started coding and picked up many different interests, but I didn't really care about spaceflight until SpaceX started doing their Falcon heavy launches and then crew launches. So as the action takes up in the spaceflight community, as SLS launches. I guess SLS launching will be a pretty great thing for spaceflight community. NASA has much more coverage than SpaceX will ever have, because they are a national organization. So I believe when SLS launches, it's going to be everywhere. Like first moon rocket to launch after Saturn V. It's going to be great. And when actual Artemis 3 launches, it will be amazing. So yeah, I guess the spaceflight community was very spaceflight action was very inert, and as it becomes more active, people will fall into love with this thing. So
I know it's really different whenever literally you're having a launch every week, something is happening in space all the
like
time now.
we had a Southcom launch, and then on Thursday we'll have another Starlink launch, and before that I guess we were having Delta for heavy launch, but it's scrubbed. But yeah, the number of launches are increasing. Maybe that's all because of Starlink, but it will increase eventually as the cost comes down. So it will be pretty interesting to see how people will, how many people will fall into love due to these increased actions.
Now, when you think about the future of humanity, like 500 years from now, what does it look like to you?
Oh, um, for me, first of all, we should be interplanetary. Like, I expect people to go and settle to Mars, just like people coming from, any other country and settling from US. Like right now, I expect to be like people emigrating to Mars, and maybe even going to Moon, just like, just for research, or maybe they have a city on Moon, not as much like as on Mars, but some infrastructure on Moon. And I really want, this global warming to be solved, or being in the process of being solved, because I guess the biggest threat we have as humans is, the climate change, and we do need to solve it. And spaceflight research will give, an important insights into what that is, why and how it can be mitigated. So definitely interplanetary species, uh, reduced access to space, and maybe even people going to the orbit or even to the moon as a vacation. It becomes so much regular, so much cheap, that people just go around the orbit to moon, just like they go to, Italy. So I hope to see that in the next 400 years.
Oh, what do you think is the biggest cause of global warming?
Mm, and what I've heard about, it's, there are many sources about it, but majorly I think we can, I guess it's more about using fossil fuels. And if we just eliminate them, it'll be pretty good. Like what Tesla has done is just short of pretty, it is just pretty remarkable, because now more and more companies they are developing cars based on battery electric cars, and maybe even fuel cells, but they are clean sources. And as much as we should just, um, I guess fossil fuels are the most kind of sources which are causing global warming. And yeah, no, I guess before we look into space, or before we seek any uh, you know sci-fi dreams that, we're gonna go to moon, we're gonna go to Mars, we should be more focused about, global warming. Because yeah, it's a very slow thing. You won't feel about it, you won't think about it, but it's happening, and there is no way of stopping it until you take action and reduce all the carbon emissions. So yeah.
I can imagine a point in the future when we're talking about not enough carbon in the atmosphere. And let me give you a scenario where that might happen. So if you consider plants, the majority of the volume, of the material that makes up a plant actually comes from taking carbon out of the atmosphere to build the plant. What if we were able, and also there's carbon can be arranged in some very strong structures like graphene, and diamond is a form of carbon as well. Uh, and can you imagine a situation where instead of like digging iron out of the earth, making it into steel, making it into the right pieces, putting it on trucks, carrying it to the building, putting it up on the crane and up on the building, instead of doing that, having a process where you could actually build a building out of carbon by taking the carbon out of the air to build the building.
I mean, yeah, I've never thought about it, but it's so it will be just like growing a tree. So uh, I guess the process will be a lot slower, but then again, the process of building is also is also slow. So yeah, so assuming that we are able to solve global warming, yeah, it could be like we have pretty low amounts of carbon in the atmosphere, and I've never thought about this thing. Um, hmm. So what if it catches on fire? So like the whole building burns down.
The whole, um, well, that happens today too.
I mean, yeah, it happens with the concrete buildings as well. But I imagine if the buildings are made up of entirely of wood, first of all, how strong will the
It wouldn't be wood, it'd be carbon, some type of carbon material.
oh, okay. Oh, okay, I get it now. Okay. So, even if we assume that these are like graphene type of structures, or maybe even, I don't really know how structurally sound will be these buildings. Like obviously we can give examples of carbon like, oh, it's a very fragile material, just look at graphite. And then someone can give an example, hey, but have you looked at diamond? It's the same material. So I don't really know. It's really interesting to see how material science develops in the coming future. We already see a lot of innovation even in spaceflight, with how like SpaceX is building like starships out of steel. Who would have thought that uh, after building Atlas rockets from 1950s, we will be building a Martian rocket from steel. So yeah, it is all due to the advancements in material sciences, and I'm really excited to see how 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 it goes much more beyond that. It strikes me that what how can we improve more, like in every part of the stock, in every field of study, we can improve, but it's sometimes like, hmm, we have gone so much from looking at the history. How can we move forward? So it really I'm just sometimes I'm studying and just going to loop. How can I go? How can we just develop more? It's an endless cycle. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Also, from an energy perspective, if you consider about how much energy the sun is radiating and how little of that energy actually falls on the earth. I
We
mean,
could. I hope we could build a Dyson sphere and use that energy.
but even if you didn't have a Dyson sphere, even if you had, a solar array that was just a few kilometers across, I mean, you could get us so much energy. You
Yeah.
know,
Mm.
how to get it
Uh,
back to the earth is the problem.
yeah, yeah, and then again, I guess I heard about, that Boeing space plane that was launched by ULA. They actually are researching about a similar concept. I remember beaming down energy from space to Earth using microwaves. So these incremental researches, which we think of as, oh, it's like sci-fi, or maybe it's like it's it doesn't matter to us right now, but if you think about it, these researchers can really shape the life of the future. So yeah.
Absolutely. Let's see. What is your plan after high school?
um, you know I have been applying to college. I'm planning to apply to colleges, obviously. uh, but it is just challenging, because I was thinking about, oh, I will get into a college, and then I'll meet new people. I'll get out of this home, first of all. I'll get out of this environment, because I really want to go out and meet new people. But, it is just hard to imagine that. It's like, okay, you're enrolled in college and do classes, because I've been doing classes just like the Zoom call, and they are not fun, because yeah, I'm learning about it, but I really want to go on campus. And you know I just feel that I hope a vaccine comes around, and you know everything will not be back to 100% normal, but it'll be back, so we can have a normal lives. And you know I believe that not only lectures, but the environment you're in really affects how you learn, or what you learn. So yeah, uh, I still will be applying to colleges, but I hope a vaccine comes around soon. Yeah.
But maybe you're getting a good glimpse of what it would be like to be on a 6 month journey to Mars. And
Oh, you know, I, I have thought about it, and it, and if it's like if it's like a regular thing, I might even go. And I made a mistake by telling my parents that I might go to Mars, and they were like, "Why? Why would you go to Mars? Would you leave us behind? And would you not, how will we even talk to you? What? So we'll have to wait 40 minutes to get a response from me." I was like, it is just a hypothetical scenario. We haven't even reached the moon yet. So it's like a long thing to just think about it. But yeah, if it's like a normal thing, like people going to Mars, maybe even like only 100 people go to Mars, I guess I will. Yeah, but I do think about going to Mars, and doing research there, and staying for 10-20 years. But I guess just have to wait and see how the things actually come out, because yeah, saying something is very different from actually making it out of reality. Which Elon does things which he says, but you never know. He hasn't done anything. Well, actually, no one has done anything like making humans an interplanetary species. So yeah, I'm really excited about the technology, and how it shapes our economy. So
so I guess that brings me up to usually my last question, which is if it was safe and affordable, would you go into space? It sounds like absolutely yes.
it is absolutely yes, but it really comes down to what's the cost. uh, by space, I assume that you mean going to orbit, or like just a suborbital flight or something.
Well, that's a good question. Usually I ask people about how far they would go. Would it be just suborbital, maybe a week in orbit, maybe 2 weeks to the moon and back, maybe a couple of years to Mars and back? But it sounds like you'd be opened up to any of that.
Personally speaking, I would be down to like, I would really like to go and spend like around a week in orbit, or maybe go around the moon. as a tourism thing. But then again, it really comes down to cost. Even though I don't really know what will happen, I usually think that if we're gonna go, or if space tourism industry will boom, it will be, uh, obviously safety matters, but I can't really say that cost doesn't matter in space flight if it's really gonna directly influence the life of people. So right now, like right now, if you are traveling via Crew Dragon, it takes like around $50 million for one seat, and it's like, uh, and Jim Bridenstine was saying, everyone can go to space, and it's now open. But is it really open? $50 million for one seat. It's but I guess it is a stepping stone in right direction, because uh, if you look at each and every technology that we are using it now, it was very expensive and like past. Like I I hear from my dad that they had got a huge computer, and it was very expensive, and uh, his family had one, just one computer. And now every family, my mom, my dad, everyone has their separate computers. And it's just like every technology is expensive at first, but it comes down to it lowers, the cost lowers down as people use it, and technological advancement takes place. So really excited for that. As for suborbital and orbital, I would really prefer orbital, but if the suborbital is like 20 to $30,000, why not? Because orbital will still be around. It will be expensive, but yeah, I guess most people will prefer suborbital. And even now, it's like 250,000 to go on Virgin Galactic, which is very good because it has never been so low to go to even suborbital. But I guess we need to bring the cost down to even more, to just directly influence people to go to space as a vacation or something like that.
Now, in the 1990s, like 1990, the internet wasn't really a thing. We had bulletin board systems, computers hooked up to modems, hooked up to landlines. We would dial into them and exchange messages and download
Yeah, I've
files.
heard that AOL tone on the internet, but I haven't really experienced firsthand because I was born in 2002. But I've heard it, like it was so radically different than we have. It's
Or
just hard
even
to.
than it was in 2000. And by 2000, everybody knew about the web. Everybody had email. Everybody was scrambling to get websites and things like that. I feel like that the 2020s are going to be to space exploration what the 1990s were to the internet. That like right now, people can't imagine traveling in space, and they can't imagine doing mining in space and tourism. And I feel
Yeah,
like in 2030, people will be like, well, of course it happens. Everybody knows about it. And everybody's like doing it. And I
it
was
is.
wondering if you
Yeah.
felt the same way.
Yeah, definitely. And you brought up the concept about mining, and yes, I guess if we are interplanetary, mining asteroids will be like one of the most important things we need to do for building a self-sustaining society. Because if we started mining materials from the asteroid belt, it will be much cheaper to transport those materials from the asteroid belt to Mars, instead of hauling it from Earth and then waiting for 7 to 8 months. So yeah, definitely. With this pace of technological expansion, people will know about it, but by 2030s, it's hard to imagine. I won't say that people won't be traveling, but people will certainly know that, oh, this technology, it's evolving. Right now, some, rich people use it, but it's going to go down the cost. Because in 2010, I wouldn't have believed that, US would be launching again. First of all, well, it was still launching, but I didn't really imagine that. And I didn't really know that, Virgin Galactic will happen and they'll do all those tests, and Blue Origin will come up there with their new Shepard. So it'll be very interesting to know, and even reusing rockets was just like, oh, no one had thought about it. No one had thought it could be possible. And today, when you go to Twitter community, and everyone is like, oh, the Vulcan is not reusable, and like, oh, they're throwing away stages, and it's just like, I feel glad that people are noticing how important reusability is. So it'll be pretty interesting to see uh, what by what will happen by 2030. I hope we land on the moon, and I hope we start sending missions to Mars more often than like this year. But this year has been amazing because, 3 Mars missions, I think that has never been done before. So science missions have been increasing day by day, and it's a delight to, be a part of spaceflight and cheer on to the people who have devoted most of their lives to these programs. It is pretty great. Yeah.
So one way I imagine this project with these interviews is as sort of a time capsule. I mean, in high school, have you ever had to do like a report of what was it like before the internet was there? You know, how do people do things? And could you imagine me doing this interview back in like 1990, going, you know, computers and the internet are going to transform everything. You know, what do you think your life is going to be? How is it going to be different and stuff? And I have like these several thousand interviews from then. And then, you know, you could imagine you're doing a report for school, like what was it like before the internet? And you're like looking at these interviews, right? And you're like going, oh, this, you
It would
know,
be like those people, they don't even really know what's going to happen in the coming years. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they go to Mars in 2028, and I'll be making false assumptions that they they won't be. So, as myself, I do really feel that I know much more about spaceflight. But if people are gonna see this, and like, this was this was a normal perception about people about spaceflight in 2020s, and look, in 2030s, we are at this point, no one could have imagined. Just imagine how 2040s will look like. So yeah, it is an interesting project of yours, and yeah, I'm really excited about it.
so I kind of imagine like in 2050 or 2100, you know, you have a high schooler on like the moon or on Mars who's having to do a research project, you know, some paper on, well, what were
Yes.
people thinking right before the new space age? And if you could talk to that high schooler, since you're like in your final year of high school, what would you tell them?
I would tell, you cannot really predict the future. You couldn't even predict how technology will evolve, because uh, no one really predicted that the computers will be this accessible to each and every one of them. And maybe it happens to spaceflight. And if someone from Moon is listening to this, it, I guess it should blow your mind to see how people thought about spaceflight, and people didn't really care. But I hope in the future that everyone gets to be a part of it directly.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Mihir. Before closing up, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Um, yeah, one thing, especially, give some love to SLS. That's my main thing, because people are cheering about Starship, and it's great. They're building Martian rockets in the middle of a farm in Texas, but a lot of work is being put up by engineers all across America, and returning us truly back to the moon. And people are focused of, some companies, I won't really mention the name, they're really adamant on just saying that SLS, it's over budget, it's behind schedules. But I say that, they haven't really looked up Apollo's budget, how much time did they take. But yeah, given the fact that they were in 1960s, we have, the money has been spent, the years have been gone by. We have done a lot of technology. They have done a lot of technological advancement in SLS. So I guess people should know more about this. They should cheer on alongside NASA that yes, once again we are going back to the moon, and Starship. Uh, it is a rocket of its own. I don't really think it's comparable to any existing rocket, but it will be flown. It has to fly much more reliably. And I heard about Elon saying that we'll be launching hundreds of satellites before we put humans on board. So SLS is our only way to go back to the moon. And I don't get people why they want to wait for SpaceX to get to the moon first. Even Elon says, I don't really care who goes to the moon first, but it's high time we should. Even though SLS is not sustainable, but it will be a stepping stone towards the moon. And I hope the general public gets more excited about that space program as well. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Um, I guess uh, you know, despite the space enthusiasts' lack of enthusiasm for SLS, there's definitely a lot of support for SLS in terms of NASA and in terms of the government. Um,
Yeah.
and
Those are mostly because the congressional pressure the NASA gets. But yeah, yeah. So sorry to interrupt. What were you saying?
yeah, I just it's funny we're not like all camping out around the green run test, running videos, live streams, and
It is just so bizarre.
it might
Yeah,
be illegal actually for us to do that, considering it's government property. But uh, there's definitely less of a promotional aspect of it. I mean, it just feels like, I mean, from where I sit, it just feels like Boeing and Lockheed um, are only interested in maximizing profits. Like they really have no desire to have an interplanetary society. That they're only interested in creating PowerPoints to get more government money. I mean, that's what it feels like from my point of view.
yeah. Uh, it's really sad that these Boeing and Lockheed are banking on costless contracting of NASA to uh, earn more. But I think more about it as much newer companies like SpaceX and even the new ones like Rocket Lab and Relativity Space and much more new companies come around. I guess they will have to change their strategy, or they will just die. Um, as for SLS, it's been done. Yeah, it Boeing took a lot of money for that. It was costless contracting. Yeah, it had its issues, but it's done. I don't really see the need to hate it. So I I don't really get it. So like people want to like cancel it so like we don't go to the moon until 2024. So yeah, I guess it's all about those hatred for all the big companies that are around here. But it is sad that these companies, uh, you know, they're taking much. more money, and they are being paid for all those mistakes they make. I guess if NASA has realized that what Boeing has done, um, from not being able to deliver Starliner to potentially, not winning the HLS contract as well. I guess NASA knows about it, and it probably won't give out much more costless contracting, because if it's fixed contracting, these companies will won't have those opportunities to do that. So
Well, and there's a bit of a frustration, right? I mean, because you know, the Boeing and the other aerospace contractors create a lot of jobs, and they also spend a lot of money on lobbying, and it costs a lot for people to get elected. And ultimately, it's the elected people that decide how the money gets spent. Now, can you imagine you're a senator? You need to raise, I'm not sure what it is, $10 million to get reelected, right? And Boeing is willing to give you directly or indirectly, half of that. And all they want is for you to continue on the cost plus contracting. NASA ultimately at the end of the day, um, it's not like you and me where we try to optimize for cost. They're optimizing for budget,
mhm.
which is a whole different thing. I mean, if you look at all of the lobbying that Boeing had done to try to keep people like SpaceX from competing against them, like with the whole Starliner, they're like, why are you giving money over to this company that can't do anything? We're the people that have launched every human to space, and then to see them like not only charge more and claim that they're doing stuff that's new, and then they're not even delivering. It's like it's just like really frustrating from that standpoint. That just like ah anyway, but yeah. But I get your point. It's like we're so close. Let's get it on. You know.
Yeah, I don't see a hate for SLS, but going forward, especially for a HLS program, NASA really needs stringent. It's going to be fixed price contract, so it'd be great. But I guess NASA should say no to cost plus contracting. Uh, and you know, cost plus does have some advantages. Elon has been against cost plus. If you check his tweets, he just says they they give money for all those mistakes they make. Uh, but I asked the same question to Tory Bruno, who is the CEO of ULA. He said, "Yeah, but cost-plus contracting is uh, beneficial for those where we don't know what we are developing. But in case of SLS, I guess we perfectly knew what we needed. We needed a rocket which was built on and using the supplies of the shuttle. So I don't really see a point of using cost plus in that case. But I hope it looks like NASA really knows how to spend money, or I should say, this administration of NASA really knows how to spend their money. And I hope, the thing with NASA is that it is a government agency, so it has to change plans according to political agendas. And Trump has been great for NASA at least, but uh, if Joe Biden comes in, or any other person comes in, and he could either say, no, we don't need spaceflight to, yeah, pump more dollars into it. It's really, it is just like so unpredictable with NASA what's gonna happen in the future. So I guess they don't do any costless contracting. So
It's
and yeah.
it's going to be really interesting that high school student, from 2050 or 2100 looking at this. I wonder, if they will have any clue who Boeing or SpaceX is. Like, will both of them still be around, or will only one of them be around, or will neither of them be around? It'd be kind of interesting to see
Yeah.
what the situation
Um,
is.
and it, and he or she will be puzzled. So as they're discussing about transferring over only 4 people to moon. Like, come on, there should be thousands of those in one go. And yeah, I hope that's why those private companies innovate, because they have a set goal and they persevere. But as for NASA, NASA has done great work into transitioning, from Obama's going to the Mars initiative to Trump's, we will go to the moon, because this Orion thing is huge. It's from the constellation program, and then it evolved. It's a completely new vehicle, just with a common name, Orion. So if people should include all those things which were done in the constellation, but yeah, I think it is one of those biggest challenges for NASA to tackle all those changes that each administration comes in. But yeah, I hope private companies continue to innovate and make us multiplanetary in the end.
I hope so too. Well, Mahir, thank you for spending some time with me and sharing your thoughts and the work that you do with NASA spaceflight. And um, I hope you find a career that helps make us multiplanetary.
I hope so too. Yeah, I'm so pumped about it. And it was really fun talking to you as well, because I don't really get to talk in such a detail with in person. So it was really fun to talk to you. And yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet. Okay, well, have a good rest of your day and look forward to seeing you online.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks.